I titled this live, Slave, I Found You. The events of yesterday sent me on a search to return back to my roots here on this channel, which was an analyzation of our mindset through the eyes of our ancestors. And so I began to search for slave narratives, and I've never read, on this channel, if you've been around here for a minute, you know that I delve into a lot of historical documents. And I do not believe in all the time I've been on YouTube that I've ever read the words of a female slave. But after everything that happened, I thought to myself, I wonder what the female slaves had to say. I heard what the men had to say about their manhood under slavery. What did the women have to say about their relationship with the men while they had their bodies brutalized? Tonight, Mr. had an event with Anthony Browder. Anthony Browder is a genius, you guys. He is a genius. And as I was sitting there listening to him, he said something very powerful. He said, more slaves were breeded in the United States than were stolen from Africa. He said millions upon millions of slaves were breeded in breeding farms here in the United States. And he said this has affected our minds. And so as I searched for what slave women had to say about their own men to help me understand everything that happened yesterday, I literally came across the most powerful account of desperation in Black women reaching for their men that I have ever seen or heard of. I'm about to share a slave narrative with you that is 200 years old. It was written February 20, I don't want to say it was written. This particular freed slave spoke to a group of abolitionists and free Black people on February 27th, 1833. That is almost 200 years ago. That is 11 years short of 200 years ago. And as I read her words, I want you to bear with me because we are going to see what she had to say about the desire for liberty that she saw, specifically in Black men. I promise you I'm not coming for anybody, but there's a lesson to be learned here from a 200-year-old account of a woman who was a slave, who was desperate to see other slaves free. And we cannot accuse her of being a feminist. We cannot accuse her of choosing wrong. We cannot accuse her of hating her own people. This is one of our ancestors. She is one of the Black bodies that was brutalized on this soil, and I want us to read what she had to say. Because This is how I felt the other day, and it almost scares me that a woman felt like this 200 years ago. So I am going to share my screen. Like I said, this is going to be old school Irene. For those of you who have been on my channel, you remember those days when I used to just pull up books. I used to just pull up slave narratives. There was no fancy editing. I didn't come on camera. And I would just like get into the, just get into the history of the thing. And I want to go back to that tonight. I want to go back to that place because it's in this place where we search out what makes us so broken that I personally find my liberty. I don't know where you find yours. Let's get into it. I hope you guys can see this. I really do hope that you can see it. I can't make it bigger. So let's talk about it. On February 27th, 1883, Maria W. Stewart gave this speech before a racially integrated audience. She did this in Boston, in the most disgusting of places, the African Masonic Hall. And this is what this slave, this ex-slave, had to say 200 years ago. African rights and liberty is a subject that ought to fire the breast of every free man of color in these United States. I want to repeat that. African rights, she didn't say Black, she didn't say African American, she said African rights and liberty is a subject that ought to fire the breast of every free man of color in these United States and excite in his bosom a lively, deep, decided, and heartfelt interest. This is how I feel myself. How can our liberty not interest you? How can revolution not interest you? She said, it should excite in his bosom a lively, deep, decided, and heartfelt interest. When I cast my eyes on the long list of illustrious names that are enrolled in the bright annals of fame amongst the whites, I turn my eyes within and I ask my thoughts, where are the names of our illustrious ones? It must certainly have been for the want of energy on the part of the free people of color that they have long willing to bear the yoke of oppression. She talked about the complacency of Black people who no longer felt in bondage, the complacency of their minds. But she goes so much further. She said, remember, this is a 200-year-old speech given by a former slave woman. It must have certainly been for the want of energy on the part of the free people of color that they have been long willing to bear the yoke of oppression. It must have been the want of ambition. What she means by the want of ambition, for those who are not familiar with that language, she means they lacked ambition. They had no ambition. It must have been the want of ambition and force that has given whites occasion to say that our natural abilities are not as good and our capacities by nature are inferior to theirs. Because Black people are lazy, because they do not have a lively, deep, and heartfelt interest in liberty, white people think we are inferior. This is an ex-slave talking 200 years ago. They boldly assert that, oh my gosh, I promise you, man, this woman, her voice from 200 years ago, they boldly assert that. Did we possess a natural independence of soul? If we, in our souls, desired to actually not be like children, if we in our soul desired to be free, if we in our soul desired to be equal to those in power, this is what this Black woman said 200 years ago. She said, wow, I mean, I need to get through this, but just every word that she said rings so true. This was my frustration yesterday. It was disgusting, but I'll let her tell you how it disgusted her because she gets to her disgust in a minute. This 200-year-old speech given by a former slave. She talks about her disgust. I just want you to hear what she is saying because it so applies to 2021, which is actually quite disturbing, if I can be honest. They boldly assert, by they she means white people, they boldly assert that did we possess a natural independence of soul and a love for liberty within our breasts, someone of our sable race long before this would have testified it. You know how I asked people to testify yesterday about wanting to lead our liberation, about wanting to build, about wanting to compete, about wanting to be in power? She said, white people, maybe they think we don't care because if we did care, maybe all these years of slavery, somebody would have stood up and said that we cared. But I want to be very clear that she's talking about Black men. And I'm not coming for Black men. What I'm saying is Black men and Black women hear this ex-slave from 200 years ago and what she has to say about the mentality of our men. And I know, oh, Irene has been hanging out with Sinji. She must hate Black men. No, this is a 200-year-old speech. It's 200 years old. It's not my words. It's the words of a slave woman. It's her words, her 200-year-old words. Hear her. She didn't know about feminism. She only knew about the fact that she had been a slave. She said, they boldly assert that did we possess a natural independence of soul and feel a love for liberty within our breasts, someone of our sable race, long before this, for those of you who say that we need time, she said long before this, 200 years ago, she said it should have already happened. 200 years ago, while there were still slaves on this soil, a Black woman said this should have already happened. They would have testified it, notwithstanding the disadvantages under which we labor. What did I hear yesterday? Oh, well, we're so disadvantaged. We're so oppressed. 200 years ago, this woman said, notwithstanding our disadvantages, this woman said that where Black people were literally being whipped on plantations, while Black women were being forced to have babies as chattel. This woman said this while our ancestors were literally in chains. She said, notwithstanding the disadvantages. She said, notwithstanding the disadvantages under which we labor, this should have already been done. There should have already been a fire in your breast to put an end to this. to rebel. 200 years ago, she said it. And now 200 years later, somebody is telling us we need more time. We need more time when a slave told you 200 years ago it should have been happening. 200 years later, there are no chains on our hands. There are no whips to our backs, but we still need the time. But a slave 200 years ago, a woman who had been enslaved could tell us 200 years ago that notwithstanding the disadvantages under which we labor, this should have already been done. But I had to sit on a panel and somebody tell me about the time. Do you see why I was so upset? And I hadn't even read this. I promise you, this is providence. This is providence. This moment right here is providence, because I had never even read this document yesterday. But I read it today. Let me repeat what she said. She said they boldly assert about Black people wanting to be rebellious and actually make some moves for their own progress. She said they boldly assert that. Did we possess a natural independence of soul and feel a love for liberty within our breasts? Anyone of our sable race long before this would have testified it, notwithstanding the disadvantages under which we labor. We have made ourselves appear altogether unqualified to speak in our own defense and are therefore looked upon as objects of pity and commiseration. Oh my gosh, I don't even know how long would this live be if I have to stop every sentence. This woman spits fire from 200 years ago. A woman who sat in slavery spits fire. And 200 years later, we are still so weak, it is disgusting. She said, we have made ourselves appear altogether unqualified to speak in our own defense and are therefore looked upon as objects of pity and commiseration. And you have Black people today who are comfortable being looked at as objects of pity. You have Martin Luther King had the audacity to encourage Black people to go get brutalized, to be looked at as objects of pity. When 200 years ago, a woman who had been a slave stood up and gave a speech 200 years ago and said that we have 200 years ago made ourselves unqualified to speak in our own defense because we have made ourselves nothing more than an object of pity and commiseration. Why does a Black woman from 200 years ago spit fire that applies to those of you today? This weakness is a cancer and it must be cut out. I am disgusted, but I'm not more disgusted than she was. And mind you, this 200 years ago, where this woman, this Black woman gave this speech, she gave this speech while our people were still on breeding farms. She gave this speech while our people were still having the flesh ripped off of their backs. She gave this speech during slavery. The weakness, the lack of effort, the lack of leadership, the lack of rebellion, the aversion to revolution is not new in us. It is a disgusting characteristic of our people that has been around for hundreds of years. And you only have to listen to this 200-year-old speech given by a former slave to know it. It is disgusting that people still have these attitudes today. But let's continue, because she did not stop there. She did not stop there. What is her name? I'll make sure to share this with you. Her name is Maria W. Stewart. She gave this speech on February 27th, 1883. She said, "We have been imposed upon, insulted, and derided on every side. And now, if we complain, it is considered as the height of impertinence. We have suffered ourselves to be considered as dastards, cowards, cowards, mean, faint-hearted wretches on this account." Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, you guys. I wish I would have read this yesterday. I wish I would have read this yesterday. I would have literally destroyed everybody on that panel without mercy. I needed to read this 200-year-old speech to get my mind right. Because after yesterday, I didn't know what to think. Oh, but I know what to think today. I know what to think today. She said, "We have suffered ourselves. We have allowed." For those of you who aren't hip to how people used to talk, when she says we have suffered ourselves, she's saying we have allowed ourselves to be considered as dastards, as cowards. This is a slave talking. This is a slave talking with more sense than most Black people have in 2021. She said we have allowed ourselves to be considered as dastards, cowards, cowards, mean, faint-hearted wretches. And on this account, not because of our complexion. It's not because you're Black. It's because you're a coward. That's what she said. It's because you're faint-hearted. You don't know how to stick to nothing. You don't know how to fight for anything. That's what this Black woman said. "Many despise us and would gladly spurn us from their presence." You think that people don't like Black people because of our skin. They don't respect us because we don't have a backbone. Collectively, zero backbone. No backbone. We're invertebrates around here. We might as well be worms around here. We lack a backbone. That is what our ancestors said 200 years ago. That is what a slave said about her own people 200 years ago. She told the truth. It's time for us to look ourselves in the mirror. That panel yesterday was a disgrace. But she gets to Black men. Don't worry. She talks about Black people, but she's about to get to Black men because she recognizes something nobody wants to recognize today. And no, it's not Irene hating on anybody. This is a 200-year-old speech. A 200-year-old speech. I'm just reading it. "These things have fired my soul," she said. "These things have fired my soul with a holy indignation and compelled me thus to come forward and endeavor to turn their attention to knowledge and improvement, for knowledge is power." And this is why I'm reading you guys a 200-year-old speech. Because the trash I saw yesterday fired my soul. It disgusted me and compelled me to come forward and read a 200-year-old speech so that you could look at yourself in the mirror and recognize that the sort of complacency and cowardice is not new to 2021. Nothing new is happening here. She said, "I would ask, is it blindness of mind or stupidity of soul?" Oh my gosh, I've never heard a slave talk like this. I have never heard a slave talk like this woman. Let me tell you a little bit about her history. Because you're probably like, what kind of slave talks like this? The kind of slave who was raised with priests, an educated slave. She was a slave. She was sold to a monastery. Her name is Maria W. Stewart. This is from 1833, the speech that she gave. She was an educated slave. She was raised with priests because she had been sold to a monastery. So if you're wondering, like, what kind of slave talks like this, that is the kind of slave that talks like this. So she asked herself, why do Black people behave these ways? Why are they cowards? She asked herself. She said, I would ask, is it blindness of mind? Do y'all just, you don't know any better? Or stupidity of soul? Or are you dumb? Do you not know better? Or are you dumb? She asked. Or the want of education? Are you stupid? You don't know any better? Are you dumb? Are you stupid? 200 years ago, this Black woman was asking that. 200 years ago. And 200 years later, that's what the heck I'm asking myself. Do you not know any better? Are you stupid? Or do you just lack the knowledge? What is it? I just need to know. I need to know the same thing she was asking 200 years ago. Please inform me. She said, I would ask, is it blindness of mind or stupidity of soul or the want of education that has caused our men who are 60 or 70 years of age? Oh my goodness. Y'all don't say that I am coming for the men. This is a 200-year-old document. It is a 200-year-old document, you guys. This is a 200-year-old document. It's 200 years old. I don't want anybody to say Irene Yvette is coming for anybody. This slave from 200 years ago is coming for them. Okay? Not me. Not me. I didn't do it. She said, our men who are 60 or 70 years of age never let their voices be heard, nor their hands be raised in behalf of their color. 200 years ago. 200 years ago. And then 200 years later, on my channel, the same thing is occurring. She said, our men who are 60 or 70 years of age never let their voices be heard, nor their hands be raised in behalf of our color. Or has it been for fear of offending the whites? That was her next question. She says, are you stupid, blind, or you just don't know any better? Or is it that you're afraid of offending white people? Now, mind you, when she gave this speech 200 years ago, there were Black and white people in the audience. And she still chose to speak with power. I don't care how anybody feels. I don't care. This is a 200-year-old speech. If this 200-year-old speech makes anybody feel any kind of way, be they a Black man or a Black woman, then if you don't know that should really, really tell you something about yourself, then you probably don't belong on my channel. I don't care how anybody feels. This is a 200-year-old speech from a slave. If this is slapping you in the face, you should be concerned about your own self. Not mad at me for reading it. She gave this speech. I didn't write this speech. This is a 200-year-old speech. Google is your friend. Google is your friend. Let me go ahead and put the information in the chat. Okay? Google is your friend. Do you want to follow along with me? There goes her name. There goes the date she wrote the speech. Here, I had to find an unarchived version of this speech, but feel free. It's on many library websites. It's on many museum websites. I chose to go to the website that had the easiest version for me to read. But if you have a problem with anything that's being said here, why don't you go back in history 200 years and take it up with the woman who gave this speech? And then ask yourself, why are you offended? Why are you triggered by a speech that was given 200 years ago? Is it because she's talking about you? Is she talking about you? I'm not offended by this speech because she's not talking about me. I've got my mind right. I have nothing to be offended by. My mind is together. My mind is solid. So she could call people stupid, cowards, all the stuff that she has said to this point. She can call them anything you want. Why don't y'all pull this up in your Google browser so you can read along with me? Because there's nothing like reading these words for yourself. This woman was a slave. And she had more of a backbone than people in 2021 who are able to just jump in a car and drive freely through the land. That makes me want to start this from the beginning. I'm not going to, though. You can rewind. But you know I'm tempted to. Because this speech will never get old. Hell, when vacation is over for the Institute, I might have my children read this speech and make it the theme of our first class every morning, because this speech is powerful. This is some mess people need to hear. I don't care who's offended. Be offended. Go ahead and be offended. Let's go back. She said, these things have filled my soul with holy indignation and compelled me thus to come forward and endeavor to turn their attention to knowledge and improvement, for knowledge is power. I would ask, is it blindness of mind or stupidity of soul or the want of education that has caused our men who are of 60 or 70 years of age never to let their voices be heard, nor their hands be raised in behalf of their color? Or has it been for the fear of offending the whites? If it has, are ye fearful ones? Throw off your fearfulness and come forth in the name of the Lord. Oh, y'all don't like Christians though, right? You don't like Christians. But the woman speaking with all this power is a Christian. But you don't like Christians, right? We're pacifists. But 200 years ago, a Black Christian woman told you to get your minds right and stop being cowards. She said, if it has, ye fearful one, throw off your fearfulness and come forth in the name of the Lord and in strength of God justice, and make yourselves useful and active members of society. Oh my gosh. Did she call for Black male leadership? She said, make yourselves useful and active members of society. This is 200 years ago. 200 years ago, here's a slave woman. Here's a slave woman saying, get rid of your fear and make yourself useful. She said, if you're wondering about what white people think, make yourself useful. Why should you make yourself useful? Oh my gosh, y'all. I'm not even going to tell you who I shared this with. For they admire a noble and patriotic spirit in others. And should they not admire it in us? Oh, this woman is cold-blooded. Do you guys understand what she's saying? She's like, oh, well, if you're just worried about what white people think, well, white people respect those who are about handling business. So handle your business. That's going to get you white people's respect more than anything. She's being sarcastic. She's being sarcastic. She said, are you dumb? Are you blind? You don't know no better? Are you afraid of white people? You're afraid of what they're going to think? Okay, well, what you don't realize is that white people respect people who know how to handle their business. So start being useful and active, and then you'll get the respect of white people if that's the only reason you won't bust a move. Yo, y'all, this is a 200-year-old speech. Can you believe this? I couldn't believe this. Maybe you guys can believe it, but I'm not even going to pretend like I believe this. This is, I'm flabbergasted, and we're not even remotely halfway through the speech. This is the realest thing I've ever heard. And you guys know I've read a lot of real shit on this channel. Go to my power playlist. Oh, we know this is going on the power playlist, don't we? This right here is going straight to the power playlist. This is the realest thing I have ever heard. In all of the speeches and all of the slave narratives from slavery, this might be the realest thing I have ever read. The realest. 200 years ago. I don't even know what to say. How can you hate on this? What is there not to learn from? I don't know about you. Some people could feel offended because they're weak. Other people might hear this speech and feel like, oh, let me get my mind together. Let me get my mind right. Because there's no reason that a 200-year-old slave should be able to talk about my attitude. Wow. She said, if you only care about what white people think, then why don't you get, she said, useful and active members in society? Because they admire that. Stop being a coward and start getting liberated, because they'll admire you for being willing to handle your business and stand up for yourself. That's what she said 200 years ago. She said, if you are men, oh my gosh, but we can't say that. But see, y'all can't call her a feminist because there was no such thing as feminism 200 years ago. So the feminism thing's not going to work. She's just keeping it real. She's just keeping it real. She's a woman. She can't fight a war. I can't even believe that this, honestly, it's hard for me to believe that this actually even occurred. I can't believe this. She said, if you are men, convince them that you possess the spirit of men. I can't. Y'all, I may not even be able to read this. This is just, this is too deep. This is too deep. This is so deep. This is so deep when I tell you, if you can see my face right now, I'm about to cry. I'm about to cry. Because my heart hurts. Why is this so deep? This is the deepest thing I have ever read. I cannot believe that a slave gave this speech, you guys. I have chills. I'm not even exaggerating. I cannot believe this is a 200-year-old speech. This blows my whole entire brain. My mind is gone on this speech. She said, if you are men, convince them that you possess the spirit of men. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Feminism where? Man-hater where? This woman was a slave. She said, if you are men, convince them that you possess the spirit of men. And as your day, so shall your strength be. Have the sons of Africa no souls? Y'all, we may not even make it through this document. She said, have the sons of Africa no souls. I know y'all think I'm making this up, right? You guys think I'm making this up. You guys think I'm making this up, don't you? I know you guys think I'm making this is a real speech that a real woman gave. A real slave woman gave this speech 200 years ago. I mean, I know it's unbelievable to me too. But this is literally the deepest thing I've ever read. I'm sorry to tell you guys that before I read this full speech, I sent it to Cynthia G. I don't know what she's going to do with this. I honestly regret sending it to her. I'm sorry, Cyn. I love you, girl, but this speech in the wrong hands, you know, Cyn is ruthless. Now, I love Black men. I love Black men. I love my people. But this speech, wow. She said, if you are men, convince them that you possess the spirit of men. Ouch. Do not get mad at me. Oh my gosh. Men, Black men, don't get mad at me. This is a 200-year-old speech. Be mad at the woman who gave this speech 200 years ago during slavery. She was angry because Black men who were free were not in great numbers, in large numbers, speaking to abolish slavery. That's what this whole speech is about. I don't even know what to say right now. I'm so flabbergasted, y'all. I'm so flabbergasted. I'm so flabbergasted. I can't even lie. I haven't even read this whole speech yet. Like, y'all are reading, I'm reading it with you. I don't even know what she's going to say next. I'm not even going to lie. I read the first paragraph and I was like, I'm going live on YouTube. Now, I didn't know it was going to get this deep. I did not. She said, if you are men, convince them that you possess the spirit of men. And as your day, so will your strength be. Have the sons of Africa no souls? Feel they no ambitious desires? Shall the chains of ignorance forever confine them? I don't even know. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I feel bad reading it. I feel convicted reading it, and I'm not even a Black man. I just feel convicted. I just feel convicted as a Black woman. I feel convicted as hell, y'all. I just don't know. I just never thought a 200-year-old document would ever make me feel like I wanted to crawl into a corner and repent. If this doesn't make you want to get your mind right, nothing will. I just don't. Let me put it back in the chat. I just know that I know people aren't going to believe that this is real. I know you guys are going to think I made this up. I know you guys are going to think I'm making it up. I'm not making this up. That's who gave the speech. That's the day she gave it. Like I said, this speech is not just on this website. You can find this speech on many other websites, including library websites, museum websites. I'm just reading it from this website because it's the easiest place for the print for me to read it from. But y'all, I just don't even know what to say right now. She said, if you are men, she's speaking to Black men. She said, if you are men, convince them that you possess the spirit of men. And as your day, so will your strength be. Have the sons of Africa no souls? Feel they no ambitious desires? Shall the chains of ignorance forever confine them? Shall the insipid appellation of clever Negroes or good creatures any longer content them? Is being the good Black always going to be good enough for you? I'm not the bad sort of Black person. I'm the good sort of Black person. I'm not the Pookie. I'm not the Ray Ray. I'm the good Black. So I don't know. There's nothing to see here. No racism here. No reason to revolt over here. Can you believe she was saying this 200 years ago? She said, where can we find amongst ourselves men of science or a philosopher or an able statesman or a counselor at law? Show me our fearless and our brave, our noble and gallant ones. Where are our lecturers on natural history, our critics on useful knowledge? There may be few such men among us, but they are rare. Oh my gosh. Is this not what the Black women were saying yesterday during my live? There's only a handful of Black men that act like this. 200 years ago, apparently, there were only a handful too. I can't believe this. I literally can't believe this. I cannot believe it. You know how we're always talking about, oh, the Black community was better, 70 years ago. Well, apparently not, fool, because 200 years ago, a Black woman was given a speech 200 years ago talking about it's rare. It's just rare. We're just not going to find them. They're far and few between. She said this 200 years ago, while Black people were literally slaves. So why is it rare in 2021 where we're not literally on a plantation getting whipped? Riddle me that. Help me understand. I know if this woman could stand in 2021, her mind would be gone. She said, it is true, our fathers bled and died in the Revolutionary War, and others fought bravely under the command of Jackson in defense of liberty. But where is the man that has distinguished himself in these modern days by acting wholly in the defense of African rights and liberty? My mind is gone. She's like, you were in the military. You were in the military. But where are the Black men that are standing up specifically for the purpose to defend African rights and liberty? She said there was one, although he sleeps, his memory lives. I don't even know what to say, you guys. I don't even know what to say. What am I supposed to say? What can I say? I'm so lost. I'm so lost. I'm so lost. Let's talk about it. In 1863, slavery was abolished. This speech was given in 1833. Hear what I'm saying. In 1863, slavery was abolished. This speech was given in 1833 by a Black woman who was a slave. Who was a slave? Can you believe this mess? I don't even have words. I don't even have words. I have no words. Let's keep going, though. Let's keep going. I already know that this live, people be like, I knew she was going to turn. I didn't turn. This is a 200-year-old speech. I'm just reading the speech. I have no control over what somebody said 200 years ago. And I cannot help it if she had her mind right and she's still on point 200 years later. The only thing this speech makes me feel is very disturbed. And that's really the only thing it should make any of us feel. Disturbed and ready to get our minds together. She said, I am sensible that there are many highly intelligent gentlemen of color in these United States. Oh, I can't do it. Let's see where she's going to talk about. She's going to talk about the educated, the high value Black men. She's going to talk about them next. 200 years ago, the high value Black man conversation was on the table during slavery. She said, I am sensible that there are many highly intelligent gentlemen of color in these United States, in the force of whose arguments, doubtless, I should discover my inferiority. She's like, they're smart, and I'm sure if I talk to them, they would be smarter than me. She said, they're smart, and I'm sure if I talk to them, they would be smarter than me. But if they are blessed with wit and talent, friends and fortune, Why have they not made themselves men of eminence by striving to take all the reproach that is cast upon the people of color and endeavoring to alleviate the woes of their brethren in bondage? I can't even do it. You know, these high value men, oh, Pookie and Ray Ray, going to jail. You don't have to go to jail. You don't have to suffer. All you got to do is work hard. Blah, 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 blah. 200 years ago, during slavery, a Black woman gave a speech and she said, I know a lot of you are high value men. That's what she just said. I know a lot of you are high value men. Heck, you guys are better than me. I'm sure you think you're better than me too. But if you're so smart and stuff, why would it never occur to you to revolt on behalf of your people? 200 years ago, this is her question. Let me read it again so you don't think I'm making this up. She said, I am sensible that there are many highly intelligent gentlemen of color in these United States, in the force of whose arguments, doubtless, I should discover my inferiority. But if they are blessed with wit and talent, friends and fortune, why have they not made themselves men of eminence by striving to take all the reproach that is cast upon the people of color and endeavoring to alleviate the woes of their brethren in bondage? Talk without effort is nothing. Whoa, talk without effort is nothing? Faith without works is dead, y'all. Faith without works is dead. That's what she's saying. Run your mouth, but do nothing. That's not useful. Where is your work? 200 years ago. That's what she was asking. Where's your work, Black men? You guys are high value. Where is your work for your people? She's asking this during slavery. Do you understand that this woman is asking this question during slavery? During slavery. Actual slavery. She's asking this question of free Black men with money and education and power. She's asking, what's wrong with you? I Am Legend said, after we get past blaming each other, Black men and Black women need to help each other. This is a 200-year-old document. What are you saying right now? What are you saying? Do you understand that this is a 200-year-old speech? Do you think this is about blaming Black men or Black women? This is a 200-year-old speech of a woman pleading that Black men step up and solely help to end slavery. Do you understand what we're reading right now? I'm not even trying to be any kind of disrespectful, but do you understand what we are reading? Do you understand that we are reading a 200-year-old speech that occurred during slavery? From a woman who was desperate to see other Black people freed from actual, literal slavery. What do you mean after we get done blaming each other? This is a 200-year-old document. If anything in this document reminds you of something going on in 2021, this is beyond Black women and Black men having a beef. This is beyond that. This is a get your mind right moment. There is absolutely zero to be offended about in this speech. We should not be offended by this woman's words. We should not be offended by the words of a woman who is a slave. This woman was a slave. Do you understand that this woman was a slave? Do you understand that she gave this speech during slavery? I don't even know what to say. Please, y'all, I need to stop looking at the chat. I need to stop looking at the chat because I just, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Like we have to think, think. I just want everybody just stop typing for 5, just think before you type. Black men and Black women, just stop and think before you type. Think about what you're saying and think about what we're reading. There is nothing that should be triggering from this. If you're triggered, it should be to do better. The only thing that this speech from 200 years ago should invoke in anybody is for us to all do better. Much, 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 much better. This is a 200-year-old speech. I don't even know what to say right now. Like, oh my gosh. I can't. I really can't. I really, honestly, I can't. I cannot. I can't. I can't do it. James Von Maxwell, we're cool, but fall back. You don't even know what this is about. You have no idea what this is about. I can't. I can't. I don't even know what to say. I don't. I'm gonna keep reading. I just request that you guys think before you type anything and just put in perspective what we're reading. I would like you to put this in perspective, and I would like you to put what should be invoked in you into perspective before you react. Do you know what I'm saying? This is not about division. This is a wake-up call. This is the alarm. You know the alarm clock that you use to wake up in the morning? This is an alarm clock. Time to wake up. Let's get up now. I'm gonna read that again. She said, I am sensible that there are many highly intelligent men of color in these United States, in the force of whose arguments, doubtless, I should discover my inferiority. But if they are blessed with wit and talent, friends and fortune, I should discover my inferiority. But if they are blessed with wit and talent, friends and fortune, why have they not made themselves men of eminence? By striving to take all the reproach that is cast upon people of color and endeavoring to alleviate the woes of their brethren in bondage. Talk without effort is nothing. You are abundantly capable, gentlemen, of making yourselves men of distinction. And this gross negligence on your part causes my blood to boil within me. Let me repeat that. She said the gross negligence on your part causes my blood to boil within me. She's hot. She's pissed. I hear you, Carl. I definitely hear you. But honestly, it's not your people who aren't willing to take up arms. It's not you guys. So this message is for us. Let's be clear. She called it gross negligence. She said it causes my blood to boil within me. Are you guys reading along? Because I put the link to this in the chat. Do I need to put the link to this in the chat again? Let me put the information in the chat again. Because, you know, people think you're making stuff up. You guys will think I'm just, you know, pretending. Nobody ever actually gave this speech. This is make-believe. There were no slaves 200 years ago that gave this speech. You know how people are. And like I said, you don't have to use the website I gave it from. You can put her name and you can see that there's much research on her. She has a very rich history. This is not the only speech this woman gave. This is just the one that interests me. She said her blood was boiling within her. Her blood was boiling within her. She said, I don't even know what to say. And for those of you who didn't get to hear this from the beginning, you either need to read it from the beginning or rewind this video because you really can't miss the stuff that came before this. She said, here is the grand cause which hinders the rise and progress of the people of color. I'm very interested in this. She said, here is the grand cause which hinders the rise and progress of the people of color. And let's be clear, when she says people of color, she doesn't mean what we mean today. The only people of color she's talking about are Black people. She said, it is their want of laudable ambition and requisite courage. Lack of courage and ambition is our problem. Lack of courage and ambition is our problem, according to her 200 years ago. And I think I could make an argument that lack of courage and ambition is her problem, is our problem today. She says individuals have been distinguished according to their genius and talents ever since the formation of man, and will continue to be whilst the world stands. The different grades rise to honor and respectability as their merits may deserve. History informs us that we sprung from one of the most learned nations in the whole earth, from the seat, if not the parent of science. She's talking about Africa. Yes, poor, despised Africa was once the resort of sages and legislators of other nations, was esteemed the school for learning, and the most illustrious of men in Greece flocked thither for instruction. But it was our gross sins and abominations that provoked the Almighty to frown thus heavily upon us, and to give our glory unto others. Man, this is deep. But y'all don't like Christians though, so let me keep reading. Sin and prodigality have caused the downfall of nations, kings, and emperors. And were it not that God in wrath remembers mercy, we might indeed despair. But a promise is left us. Ethiopia again stretched forth her hands unto God. And by Ethiopia, she means Black people. But it is of no use for us to boast that we sprung from this learned and enlightened nation. This is for those of you guys who want to throw an ankh on everything. And Egypt and Africa at every 5 minutes. She said, it's no use for you to boast about coming from Africa. For this day, a thick mist of moral gloom hangs over millions of our race. Our condition as a people has been low for hundreds of years, and it will continue to be so unless the true piety and virtue we strive to regain that which we have lost. She said the condition of our people has been low for hundreds of years, and that's not going to change until we get our minds right. Y'all, can you believe this? I can hardly believe this. I really can't. Nice said, Freedom, do you think the message of the speech should be enough to motivate? Do you think seeing a new hashtag every other month should be enough to motivate? I don't think this speech can be compared to a hashtag. But yeah, I do think that education and understanding your history and hearing a 200-year-old speech that speaks perhaps to an individual's attitude today, yes, I think a lot of people will read this or hear it and it can change their heart. I do believe that. Do I think that's going to work for everybody? Absolutely not. But it would definitely behoove us to not bother to read the word of our actual ancestors because every single person is not wise enough to listen. Yeah, I think a lot can be taken from this speech. And I think it will definitely affect people who have an ear to hear the wisdom in this slave woman and what she had to say 200 years ago. I definitely think that. Freedom is gold. What in her speech was not accurate? Because I detect no lies. So what in her speech was inaccurate? I guarantee this woman speaks with more wisdom than most of our community has in their little pinky. I guarantee that. What is wrong with so many people? Not speaking to anyone in particular, but what is the resistance? What is the resistance that you guys have? Whatever. I'm done wasting my time. You guys have the link. You guys have the link. Read it for yourself. Read it for yourself. Be broken for yourself. Maybe I'll do this for my patrons and my members. I legitimately just don't even have the time for the bullshit. I don't. It's all pathetic. It's pathetic. And you know what's sad? What's sad is how many of our people don't see that it's pathetic. But you know what? Yo, whatever. I'll talk to you guys later.